Hi, I'm Wendy Gardner. Now you can solve the problem of sewing over bulky seams with this really nifty little sewing aid. It eliminates skipped and uneven stitches and broken needles because it's a bulky seam aid. You use it to stitch over bulky seams. So it has a thicker wedge on one end and a thinner on the other. Both have the indentation here as well. And the idea is that you can slot it behind your presser foot to level up the foot, or you can slot it in front of the foot to level up the foot when you're going over bulky seams. So I'll show you what I mean. If I put this under without it in place and lower my presser foot, you can see that the foot is angled upwards, which means that as I stitch, it's got to climb that hill, which is when you start getting really, really tiny stitches, skipped stitches, or even broken needles. So what I'm going to do is raise it up again, pop it underneath the back to level it up, and then I'm just going to move it all over a little bit so I can stitch closer to the edge. I can then lower my presser foot so my foot is now lovely and level, and then start stitching. Take out the pin as I go. And that is stitched nice and easy. Now it's gone off that, but again it's still a little uphill. I can actually put it into the front. Again, I'm going to line up the aperture in the centre there with the needle, so as I'm stitching that little bit further forward, keeping it nice and level and pulling it out. And now I'm on to a flatter section, I have no problem. When I get to the corner, I can again use the tool to help me go around the corner nice and smoothly. So again, I'm just getting to my corner. As I get to the end, I stop with the needle down, raise the presser foot and rotate, and then pop it behind the foot again to level that up so that I'm ready to stitch. So again, once it's done its job, it falls out. So it's a really nifty, handy tool. So there's my pocket, beautifully attached with no skip stitches and no trouble going over that really bulky seam. So I've used this when sewing this coat, this blanket coat, and turning back the edges and sewing without any trouble whatsoever. But that's not all you can do with this tool. Yet again, it has a second purpose. I'm using the aid now to sew on a button. So I've put it on top of the fabric in position, and this time I've put it in horizontally so that the opening here on the narrow edge is in line with my needle. The button's in place. The holes in the button are also horizontal, lining up with the hole in that. Selected zigzag stitch, lowered the feed dog so that the fabric and the button is not being fed, and I just have to go through the holes about 8 times. And then once I've done that, just one more time, I'm now going to take it out, leave a long thread tail. Now I'm going to take the thread through to the underside of the button. Just thread it on an ordinary needle. And you can see when I pull that away from the fabric, you can see that there's actually a thread shank which has been created by having that aid underneath the button. Can wrap these tails around that shank, creating a nice little shank there before taking them all the way through to the buck and tying them off. I'll do that in a second. So it means that when I button up, the button will lay nice and flat because there's room underneath it for the fabric to go. So there's my little bag ready with my button in place. To avoid skip stitches or broken needles, just use this little jumper to go over the bulky seams.